one. Hello, my name is Bryce Tubbs. With me today is Drew Hulburt. He's the owner and operator of AimX Training, and he helps stiff and achy slouching professionals to improve body function, health, and posture. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Drew.
Man, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Excellent. What was life like before you got into, the posture and the structural correction kind of field, and what was the catalyst that brought you here?
It's a great question. It's a very personal story for me, honestly. Life before this was me just being a high school kid. I was actually training to join the Marine Corps, and while I was training for that, I ran into a lot of different injuries. I ran into the problem of, because I was sitting all day in school, which most professionals sit all day at their job, I was getting hurt during doing certain things in my training. And I stumbled kind of across this problem of like, the way that I'm behaving throughout the day is actually causing me problems in my training. And if I'm going to be healthy, I need to figure out how I can exercise and train in a way, for my goal of the Marine Corps at the time, it's going to be productive in some sense. And that didn't work out due to my anaphylactic peanut allergy. I got disqualified from service, but I kind of made the pivot of, well, I have all this information, and I kind of developed it for myself in some sense, and I got certified, started training people, one-on-one in-person stuff, and then took it online, and it's kind of just grown from there. So it kind of just fell into it through some circumstances that I hadn't seen.
So let me ask you this question. So what is some of the main causes of either bad posture or aches in our body that most people would not expect?
So that's also a good question. The thing that people think about when they think about poor body alignment, poor posture, things like this, is they look at their body in particular. And they say, all right, well, I'm slouching, I need to sit up straight. And our bodies don't necessarily function that way. That's consciously trying to fix a particular problem. And it's almost like it never works for anyone. If you just tell them to sit up straight all the time, it's very difficult to maintain that. The thing that the root cause, the real issue is that when you spend time in any particular position, your body's always listening to that. It's always paying attention and saying, all right, well, if you're going to sit for 9 hours a day, we're going to get really efficient at sitting. And what that means is your body will slowly start to adapt. A little bit at a time, the muscle length and tension relationships, your hips will get tight in certain ways. The front of your hips will get tight, but the back will get loose. And that will start to shift the way that you move. And that's going to start to cause other problems. But it means that you're now fighting against your own muscles to try and sit up straight or to try and have your hips move properly. So it's not necessarily that you're spending time, slouching. It's that you're slouching because there's an imbalance in how your muscles are moving against one another. And unless you address that particular issue, you're never going to get to the root cause. You can, have amazing ergonomic products and spend thousands of dollars on the best setup ever. But if you don't actually address the muscles themselves with the correct stimulus, you're never going to be able to see any kind of lasting result in some sense. So people think that it's there necessarily like, oh, I need to change all these different things. I just need to sit up straight. It's like, yeah, you do. But at the same time, you need to figure out what are the actual problems and then start to correct them individually, not just look at it as poor posture, sit up straight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I know it's what you help your clients with, but what would be the first step to understanding which one's tight, which ones are loose, and which one you should go and attack first?
Well, you got to make a hierarchy of priority because you can only fix so many problems at a time. And it's really you never know what the main problem is. That's when, when someone comes in, I do an assessment with them in some sense so I can get an idea of what's going on. Because, for example, I found a head down approach works really well because of, gravity. If your head is moving forward and you're sitting at your computer all day kind of looking down here, that can refer some tension to the middle of your back. And that can start to cause you to round over a little bit more because then it's a little bit more comfortable, which is going to refer some more pressure to your low back, which is then going to clamp down your hips a little bit more because you're sitting the whole time leaning forward. So all because your head is forward, you now have referred issues all the way down your body to your hips. Very common for all this stuff to be very interconnected. So you might come to me and say, hey, look, my low back hurts all the time. I don't know why. I tried a standing desk, but it hasn't helped.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do in some sense. Like, well, it might not be the fact that you were sitting. Your back pain could easily be coming from the angle of which you're looking at your monitor or your cell phone if you're looking down at it. So it's really about piecing together what their problem is and then what their environment is. These two things are what cue me into what's really going on, because where you feel the problem isn't necessarily where it exists.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this question. So you mentioned something interesting. There's two things we can go, but first, how would you hold your phone in a more, better way? Because most people are hesitant to hold it straight up in front of their face because then everybody is, photoing them.
I have actually done that before, and someone has asked me, "Hey, are you taking a photo?" I'm like, "No, I'm just on my phone." I always I look at the angle of my head position is the thing that I'm always paying attention to. So it's not necessarily if my phone is where it's at, but where it's in relation to how my head is. So a lot of the times I will look at my phone just like a regular person does. Like I'm just down here in this position. But one thing that I'll do is I'll switch hands and I'll look off to the side instead of looking straight down. Because two things: when your hands are together, your pecs are getting tight and you're closing yourself off and you're looking down here. This is going to round your shoulders forward. It's going to start to cause other issues. Now, if you can rotate your head to the side and look at your phone, well, this position here is a lot easier just due to the fact that your shoulder is now what's considered external rotation. You're opening up this side of the chest. Looking to the side, you can actually stretch your neck just a little bit. And yeah, you're looking down, but you're not looking straight down in some sense. So this is a very simple one. I mean, I'm ambidextrous, so I do either hand totally fine. It doesn't make a difference for me. But for going back and forth, that's like one that I found just during the day makes a big difference for me because it gets my hands apart. A lot of people think the problem is looking down, which is a problem, but a bigger problem is having your hands together. When you're on a keyboard, even like just at your computer, when your hands are together, your pecs are tight, your chest is internally rotated, and that's going to be a bigger problem than your head just looking down at your cell phone.
Just writing that down. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Now, we were talking earlier about, your chair and your computer setup. Can you give a little bit more of a description of what you do and why you do it?
Yes, totally. So this desk I had made, and I'll show you in just a second. I built it at my buddy's shop, who's a woodworker. I kind of told him a little bit about what I wanted. Now, the chair that I have is from Goodwill. I picked it up for no money at all. And in some of my other pieces of content, I showed this headrest is just a mat for working out. And I taped a piece of wood to the back of this at this angle so that when I sit in my chair, I'm able to lean back like you would in a recliner in some sense, but it keeps my head in a straight angle. So if I'm sitting here, my head doesn't necessarily move when I look straight up. Now, this angle is kind of weird, and if I had a laptop, this wouldn't work. However, the thing that makes this whole setup work for me is that I have my monitors sitting up on a shelf on my desk, and I have them kind of leveled out with some cardboard boxes and stuff. What this allows me to do is when I lean back into my chair, see, my angle is great because as I sit here, I look straight ahead at my monitors. So it's not that, I would say, it's not necessarily about if I'm leaning back. I can sit up straight and look at my monitors, but not everyone wants to do that all day. I can just lean back in my chair and look straight ahead. What I don't want to do is be leaning back and looking down. That's the worst possible position that you could be in. I mean, really, that's what I see a lot of professionals in. It's kind of nice to recline back, and then they're either even a slight degree. If they just look straight forward like this, you can see here this position. It's like, well, my head's straight up. Not really. It's actually down. It's just that I'm angled backwards. So in a recliner, if you're reclined back, looking straight ahead is looking down. It's just as bad in some sense. You have to get your monitors up higher in some sense so that if you lean back, you can look straight ahead at them. So that angle is going to look a little bit weird, but for setting up an at-home office, it's all you means is some cardboard boxes and an external keyboard and mouse. That's really all you have to do, because I have a laptop that I use. I just flipped it up here on some cardboard boxes and I lean back. That's what I had done for the longest time while I was getting my desk made originally. So I think in that that kind of setup, I mean, especially like I've worked from home for a while now, so I was fortunate kind of with the whole situation to have the stuff set up ahead of time. But you don't have to have a whole desk made. You just have a keyboard, a mouse, and some cardboard boxes and set it up with that in mind. It's all you need. You really don't have to go spend a bunch of money on stuff. And that's my thought was, you know, the whole desk was like $200 because I bought the base of it off Amazon, and then the wood I just got from Lowe's, and I built it myself in some sense. And then the chair, same thing. It's just kind of stuff that I had around. So you can do it yourself. You don't necessarily need to spend a bunch of money on stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right, that makes sense. You know, just kind of switching gears and really thinking about vision and stuff, right? You know, what's the vision for as far into the future as you would like to go?
So, I mean, I have a lot of different things that I'm thinking about all the time, but the biggest one is the fact that these problems that I'm helping people address are not talked about enough, in the sense that most medical systems work in a way where until there's a diagnosable issue, they can't help you in some sense. Traditionally, there's obviously lots of different practices that, you know, can do lots of great things for people, but not everyone has access to them in some sense. And really what I teach people, or I'm sorry, what I do is teach people. I educate them on these concepts so that they can take control of this stuff for themselves. And if, you know, well, education is something that can be available to everyone with the mediums that we have. It's fantastic. So I'm trying to, you know, help individuals help people at an individual level through my training and coaching, but I want to bring awareness to this problem. So like long-term, big vision, I would love to see gym classes at a high school level talk about this stuff, because kids are born with cell phones now, and the cost of Gen Z healthcare is going to be through the roof from a physical therapy perspective, because the ACL tears, the kyphosis, the neck issues, the back pain, that is happening to younger and younger people in some sense, because that's the environment they're being brought up in, could all be prevented at way less cost to everybody involved, less cost in money, less cost in time, less cost in the pain of the patient, if they understood these concepts and then put them into practice on their own. They took responsibility for it in some sense, and they had the information. You could fix a lot of problems in some sense. And I mean, I think the best way to fix a problem is to prevent it from ever happening. And that's really, you know, from a big vision perspective, having this stuff taught at that mass of a scale to that many people, yeah, maybe it wouldn't get through to everybody, but at least they'd have the information if they needed it. And I think that, you know, that really would be kind of the big vision of where I want to go in some sense. I know it's leaps and bounds from where I'm at, but it's, you know, one step at a time to get there.
Yeah, and it can go exponential. Let me ask you this question. So I've always wondered this: what causes ACL tears?
A lot of different things. The knee is an amazing joint. It's built like it's bulletproof in some sense. It's so strong. It's incredible. But you have these things that are like so common for some reason. These particular issues, ACL tears. You hear it all the time. Like the number of how many people have had them is ridiculous. Okay, so let's zoom out from the actual ACL and look at the body. The hip and the foot are going to be the places that these problems are actually caused, not the knee itself. The knee is, like I said, it's a joint that's developed very, very well in some sense. It only has one function, which is to hinge. And so when your foot, there's two things that I personally think, and this is my opinion, there's a lot of different kind of data on it. I think it's footwear. I think it's the shoes that we wear. The more cushioned shoes we wear, they collapse our arches because they artificially replace them. Then what that means is that you no longer have ankle mobility, which means your knee can't move properly over top of your foot. So ankle mobility, foot function, that's the first major culprit. I think it's a big problem. The types of footwear that we are traditionally worn for athletics, I do not believe are actually conditioned for performance. I'm a big believer that minimalistic shoes allow for your own structures to develop and strengthen, and that is the best structure. Like no foam is going to be able to replace the articulation of all like 20 some joints inside the foot. Like it's very complex. And to think that if you cushion that, it's going to and somehow make it better. So yes, it might stop some impact pain, but it won't. One of the side effects of that is you atrophy the muscles inside of it. Then you can go look at the hips. Like, well, if you sit all day and then you start losing mobility, your body will start to adjust the way that it moves because you no longer have capability for this range of motion. And so instead of saying, well, we can't move this way because we're out of range of motion, it will say, I'm going to compensate by putting pressure on other joints and on other ligaments, other tendons that it maybe shouldn't, because it still wants to be able to move. It still wants to be able to get the job done. So sedentary lifestyles combined with modern footwear, I think, produce the most knee problems for people. And if your hips don't function properly, your knee will suffer. If your feet don't function properly, your knees will suffer. And most people's foot and hips don't function properly in some sense.
You know, I really appreciate your time really talking to. Do you have any new things coming out, like a conference, program, book, anything coming out new?
Nah, nothing new per se, but my Body Fix Training is the program that I help people, that I use as a vehicle for helping individuals with this. And I'm always working on it in some sense. It's a program that's always growing as I work with new professionals, as I encounter new problems. So that's kind of the one main project that I have that I'm always working to develop in some sense. You know, I think that as I get more and more clients, I get to work with more and more individuals, and I have that ability. I build and grow my program to accompany more and more problems, help more and more people in some sense. So that's the one thing that I'm always working on. You know, I'm working to grow that and to grow the content that's in there and to grow my coaching, expertise and experience.
Nice. Where can people either go to learn more about you, or where can they go to connect and follow your story more?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my sole place. I do everything off of there. Just Drew Hulburt. Drew, spelled how it sounds, Hulburt. And I'm sure I'll be tagged in this video and engaging on it. But the LinkedIn's the only place I stay on there, because I find that from a social media perspective, if I go all in one place in some sense, I'm able to get a lot better results that way, instead of spreading myself thin. Until I have a team of people to help me spread that message, it makes the most sense for me just to stay there. And so that's the best place you can find me. All my contact information is on LinkedIn, but that's where you go if you want to talk to
me. Nice. Thanks again for your time, really, coming and sharing some time with us, some tips with us.
Yeah, of course. I'm always looking to, like I said, spread my message. I have some big visions for how I want people to understand this stuff, how I want it to affect the world in some sense. So every opportunity I can have to talk about these things, to bring them to the front of someone's mind who maybe doesn't even know that these can be problems, that's always an opportunity that I'm going to take in some sense, because I know it's going to do a lot of good for people.
Excellent. And for those watching, we thoroughly hope that you found this valuable. Now, if you have been searching for a place where, people are improving themselves and helping others do the same, I recommend you go and check out our free community. There's going to be a link either above or below the video. It's basically a mastermind where people come together and uplift and support each other every single day. So if that is what you have been searching for, I would love to invite you to come and join us inside that community. There's going to be some links either above or below the video. Now, hopefully you enjoyed watching this as much as we enjoyed creating it. Feel free to hit that share button so other people can get some great value as well. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. We're done recording in 3 and 2.